Okay. Hello, how is everybody doing? I have got this tune, Hamdi Swing King. You came here, you clicked the video, you saw the title, you know what we're doing. Here's the original. Hopefully I don't get a copyright strike, and then it'll immediately go into my recreation. Alright, let's fucking go.
Yeah.
Alright, so yeah, you guys know the tune, pretty recent, everyone's playing it out in their set. We are going to be recreating this little honker over here. To get these 808s, I literally just used current. I put a bunch of knock on it because it'll give it that punch, added a little bit of decay and some noise. It's just sub and a noise, like 100%, just a little punchy thing. Just a normal 808. Yeah, not important. But what we're making is we're going to do this. So let's initialize this. Go here. And real quick, I'm going to just show you. It's super easy. It's just sine wave FMing a sine wave. We're going to initialize this preset and start it from scratch. I hope the automation stays. Yeah, so we're going to just chuck this onto a sine wave, and then I don't know if it comes with the one that I used. I think you have to maybe download this like on their stream, the sine harmonics. I don't know if it's just in there automatically. It might be, but I use this one because if you're using like Serum, you could do the same exact thing in Serum super easy, but you'd go into digital wavetables and choose harmonic series, and that's pretty much what this is, except they don't call it harmonic series. But so we got A and B. I'm going to run this up to, I think it was about here. I just had three harmonics, and then you turn that down, and I'm going to add just a little bit of honk to this wavetable, because if you flatten out the top part of that curve, it's going to give it a little bit of extra chunk. And I did add some noise. I like gear static as my favorite. It sounds the best to me for noise for whatever reason. Not that it really matters. You could choose white noise. It's all just noise. You could even, if you wanted to, not even use the sampler and turn the sub on. And I had this down to, I think this wavetable was down to, let me double check. Oh, 3 and 1. So, I mean, 2 and 1, same thing. I just have it set to, I don't have the notes. I don't have the notes going below the center octave, so it goes from D all the way up to F and then back down again, just in case anyone cares. But yeah, so a lot of notation, and when it comes to sound design, I feel like people forget to mention that like a lot of the feeling of any synth or anything that you play instrument, most of the feeling and vibe you're going to get is directly off of the instrument from the notes, from the feeling of the notes. And that's why someone can sit down who's a legendary keys player and play anything on any, no matter if it's a Casio or a Child's Toy or Rhodes. They can sit down and make it sound good because they know the language of the keys and they're playing the emotion of the notes. So a lot of the sound you're going to get from no matter what you're trying to recreate, if you're watching tutorials on the internet, like you always can get like a chunk of the idea down just by having the correct notes. So that being said, a little music theory never hurt anybody. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take this, little harmonic thing, and then we're gonna make this the rate, go to curve down here, and then I'm gonna change this to like a little bit of a kind of a nice, I'm gonna give it a nice little smooth curve for our envelope here, and then I think we were at like a 16th triplet, and then I'm gonna put that on here. I think I was ramping up to about like 30% or so. Yeah, something like that. Oh yeah, we're gonna drop that into oscillator B. Take that down just slightly. Then let's go into, where was I at? Oh yeah, take this curve, drop it into there. Again, you probably don't even need that. I'm just going to add this to here for a little bit of that warmth. And then honestly, you could, without even using this extra sampler, you could probably just go into noise here and then punch up the noise. And yeah, it's like literally not different. But sometimes white noise can help with like sounds if they sound too clicky, or so a little bit of masking kind of just helps just add a little bit of character to anything that you're doing. So I always recommend just having a little bit of noise on something. It smooths the sound out, even though you wouldn't think it does. Like overall, I mean, you can EQ that out later on anyways, which most people will and do. So it doesn't really matter too much. This might be too fast. But yeah, so we've got that. Okay, and I had that's why it sounds really, really bad. So we're going to take this like pretty far down. You don't need to throw it on oscillator B, but you're going to chuck this curve onto the cutoff, and then where were we at over here? Yeah, going up about halfway. And you can change the filter type to taste. This will make it a little bit more percussive, which I don't personally want for this bass. But yeah, so we're going to take this down and then drag it up. Yeah, I don't like the way that sounds. On this other one, I think I used a secondary filter just for like a little bit more character. So I left this one open. I could probably open it a little bit more. Get a little bit of that knocking character out of it. And then I'm going to bring this down to, I think it was about 700 or so. And if you wanted to, you could, if you wanted to get real nerdy, you could look up the frequency of the notes, like E at 7 etc. hertz. Or I guess another little trick, if you want to keep things really tight and in tune, like as best as you can. I don't have any processing on the original one, but you can open up the keyboard down here in FabFilter and say, oh, here's E3 right here. Or I guess we'd be at E4. How high up are we? Okay, yeah, so about E5, if we're keeping these in note, is about 659 hertz. And then so you could, pop that down and then give a little resonant peak there, so you have an E, a tuned a tuned little filter here, which I think you could probably do. You could tune this, or there's like an option to tune things in here a little bit better. Like you could lock it into here somehow. I don't use that, but yeah, if you want to get nerdy, you can look up the frequency of it and tune it the way you want. But another thing that I didn't put too much resonance on this on the original, and I kind of cut that off a lot steeper. But what I did was I have a little default rack. It honestly doesn't do anything, but I went into the compressor it was this. Yeah, I bumped the drive up, but I actually, on my original remake, I tuned the resonance down here. I used this one. This is a little hard to adjust, but yeah, I tuned mine down here, and I don't know if I dropped it down just slightly, and then I gave a little bit of a resonant boost. Until it just gives a little bit of extra character. But yeah, I mean, it doesn't really matter, but if you want to add that bump over here, it's a little bit harder. I don't have that tuning option right there, I guess. On the other one, I had a curve. On this one too, it was just adding a little subtle bit of character to these other things just to humanize it a little bit more. Like I added this curve at a 2-bar rate, and I also opened up the filter just slightly. Okay, so a lot of the character I got from the original came just from the resonance, mostly being tuned properly. But I dialed in like that percussiveness of it here. The original's got a nice full bass line, so I'm actually going to move this up to crossover to like 130 because multi-band has a little bit of a phase shift between these bands, so I don't want to get into anywhere into the kick and sub range, just so there's not any phase issues inside of that area, but it's more manageable like at a higher range like 140, so there's room for the kick and the sub to just exist without any potential phasing issues. Not that that realistically should be a problem, but I just tend to avoid it because I'm a nerd. Pretty close. No, nothing's ever going to be spot on recreated. I think mine, we had a little bit of a shift on it, but that's the sound for the most part. Like you can get really close just by like listening. Yeah, I have 24 cut on that one. Yeah, they're not really. The original sounded way better, obviously, but what are you gonna do? That's the sound for the most part. Yeah, it's all about fine tuning when it comes to any sound. Really, processing is 100% a signature sound in my opinion. Like you could, if you're trying to be like Skrillex or someone else, like you're never going to process your sounds the exact same way that he might process his sounds, or whoever artist, name any artist. Like you probably don't have all the exact same plugins. You probably don't maybe have the same hardware, or you might not be using the same actual synth. Like I think it all, there's so many variables when it comes into recreating someone's sound. That's why it's always best to just try and do your best to create sounds you've never heard before. It's a lot easier, and even with stuff like this, like you'd be surprised like how much stuff that people seek to go create in music, especially dubstep nowadays, is super simple. Like this is one of the easiest, just FM. This is a million songs right here. Like if you FM this a little bit more, and then put this pitch just going on a downward slope, it would be the Night Hunter bass. If you just boosted the FM, put this on a downward slope. A lot of you might not even remember that song, but that's a classic techno song that, like, there's so much out there that is just easily done with very simple steps. Some of you are going to remember that. If you're a classic dubstep fan, you'll remember that bass line. But there's so much. Just try and find what sounds good to you and run with it. Like, a lot of music is really, really sound design. When it comes down to it, it's really simple stuff. Like, all the most effective stuff is the simplest stuff. Dillinger, for example, that guy just saturated 808s like a motherfucker, and it went hard in the paint, and people still are like, how did he do it? It's just do what feels best. If you think it's a banger, then fuck what anyone else thinks, and then do that. But yeah, so that's the sound, and I hope that you guys learned some things. Sorry, I'm just always rambling, but yeah, and enjoy.